everyone. We're joined today by Susan Kortz, Senior Vice President of Operations at Decision Point Systems. Thank you so much, Susan, for joining us.
Thank you for including me. I'm excited to be here.
Susan, you know, we've known each other for a while now, but I think the rest of the folks here would love to learn a little bit more about who you are and what you do at Decision Point Systems.
Not a problem. I joined Decision Point Systems in 2020. I decided that it was a good opportunity to grow a managed services practice, and Decision Point was looking for a leader to go ahead and kind of launch that, as well as take over some operational responsibilities. So I raised my hand and they signed me up. As part of growing that business, one of the offerings we really wanted to expand on is managed network services. Included in that, obviously, we really needed an NPM platform that, one, was reliable, easy application, our customers could understand the value. And I had a background with Netreo since 2007, so it's been a while. And over the years, I've seen the expansion that Netreo has made. And I really thought this would be a great opportunity to bring the application in-house at Decision Point, to package a solution around it. And we created a partnership here at Decision Point with Netreo, including yourself. So I was very happy to bring that on board. And it's taken off. We've had a lot of interest. Our customers are see the value, which to me is the most important thing at the end of the day. We focus a lot in the retail space, a little bit of healthcare, quick serve restaurants, things of that nature. And there's a real need for a platform that's ease of use, and one specifically that we could integrate into our overall vision platform, which is something that we include to our customers. So it's been a long time relationship that's been building. And frankly, we've taken Netreo to every place I've worked since 2007. So, which you already know.
That's fabulous. Thank you. And we so appreciate your partnership as well on the personal and professional level, because there's so many insights that we always get from Susan, given your experience in the industry. So one of the industries that Decision Point System knows really well about is retail. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of what you've been seeing out there in terms of the digital transformations in the retail industry?
Sure. Retail really has, since the impact of COVID, has really taken on some changes. Obviously, IT departments within retail organizations are very, very slim most of the time. There isn't always a lot of investment in any proactive tools to help ensure that revenue continues to stream through, whether it's a brick and mortar, could be an e-commerce site. That seemed to be lacking. Now, when COVID hit, unfortunately, staff got even a little slimmer, and they really needed something that was going to have a more pragmatic and predictive approach to managing their infrastructure. Retail shifted its overall look. If you notice, the brick and mortars began to close. People were doing curbside pickup. They were ordering online, and the focus of infrastructure shifted from that brick and mortar enterprise solution to perhaps their distribution centers. So they put a lot of money into those distribution centers, a lot of new technology, but what they didn't necessarily factor in is the availability of all that technology in one space. And they really needed a platform that enabled them to get those analytics so that they could make better business decisions, but they didn't have the staff to do the eyes on glass, so to speak. And that's one of the reasons we like Netreo so much, is because we're able to set those thresholds. We're able to determine what's really an actionable alert versus something that might just be what's going on in the environment. Retail really took a hard look and said, hey, we've implemented platforms. They don't really give us a proactive approach. They're quite expensive, and we need a lot of people to administer them. And so that change made it great for a company like Decision Point to go in and have these conversations, because that shift of having a body in-house, not only to do the administrative overhead, but in the store itself, those bodies were no longer there either. They were not having people calling in problems. The staff was no longer there. So they really needed to focus on the dependability and the intel from the technology to feed back to, let's say, the mothership or corporate headquarters to show them what was going on in their stores.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's been so much happening in the retail industry, not just in terms of the, new technologies that are available to serve, but also I think it all starts with the customer experience and the customer demand, where we're all looking at getting our, products a lot faster, our shopping experience a lot smoother, and all this amidst, the COVID period. And now as we go through this now, and hopefully past it, what would you say are some of the residual sort of impacts or effects of COVID?
Well, what we found is a lot of folks really liked having a self-service model for their customer experience. You always will have a consumer that likes that personal touch, but there are many of the millennials and beyond that really like the Amazon experience, even if they go into a store. So we've implemented a lot of kiosks you'll see developing in actual brick and mortar. A lot of folks will order online and they will pick up at the curb, or they might go into a store and pick up, but that interaction is somewhat minimal. So again, the technology that they're using, whether that be a kiosk that it may have some digital signage, attributes to it. They might be going online and placing an order, making sure that that order funnels all the way through back to the distribution to make sure that they have it available. All of that has very little human interaction. And the impact that that has made is the consumer can get in and out very quickly. It helps generate more sales because you require less interaction, so you can actually close out more sales in a given time frame. And the technology in those kiosks are very dependent on heavy usage. So what before you might wait in line 5 people deep, now you have 7 kiosks. You can handle all 5 of those transactions all at one time. So the bandwidth that's coming into those stores, the availability of the technology in each of those kiosks, they all need to have those 4 or 5 nines. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen if they don't have a tool that they can use that gives them that information. So we found that really that self-service element is something that we didn't necessarily expect. We understood why it was required during the pandemic, but as we came out of it, we thought people would somehow migrate back to that personal touch. And really, it's a 50-50 shot now. So retailers, quick serve restaurants are really focusing on how can we give tools to our consumers so that they can be in and out quickly, they get what they need, and they still walk away with a positive customer experience.
That's fantastic. And I think that really makes a lot of sense, especially since, we are now living and shopping in a different era. I mean, a lot of what you're talking about is almost like the physical locations that people are getting out there too, but there's a whole realm around online shopping as well that is super relevant. And we've been talking a lot about retailers, but it sounds like you've also have experience in healthcare and medical providers. Is this experience similar to?
It is. The only difference is obviously when you're dealing with a healthcare provider, everything is life and death, literally. So when you walk into a healthcare provider and they can't find your records on their tablet, they're not able to issue a prescription. They can't look at the medications that you may have real time to determine whether or not there may be complications. All of that is life and death. If any one of those elements are not functional, if they don't have access to the technology that feeds them that information, that could really cause the patient, the doctor, the overall hospital some grave concern. So we've seen a lot of less self-service in a healthcare environment because obviously someone is going there to receive care about their health. So they're physically usually talking to someone, but even we had a lot of where you could phone in and talk to a nurse, you could talk to a doctor, you could have that consultation virtually. There's technology that goes into that. In those doctors' offices, they need to have the availability to have 5 or 6 different sessions going at one time to help their patients. And the reliability of that infrastructure is really, and I say this multiple times, life and death is really valid in those environments. So if anything goes wrong, you want to get ahead of it. You cannot have 15 appointments backed up of people who are really in need of care because you can't get ahead of what might be a potential problem.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. So there's a whole much data that seems to be flowing through this. We're not just talking about the availability of information, but you talked a little bit about predictive analytics as well, getting ahead of things and understanding what's happening. So what's the value proposition for utilizing Netreo's analytics?
Well, we do it a couple different ways. Obviously, it depends on the vertical we're supporting, but if I were to choose a healthcare provider, I want to make sure that my technology, when they're a 24-hour shop, right? They never close. So if I have a patient going into ER, I don't want to find out when they show up that my connectivity is not on, that the devices I'm doing to test your temperature, that I'm looking at getting your prescriptions filled on, that isn't working. Because if in fact that person is in a 911 situation, every minute of downtime of any kind on a device, the applications that are being used. I know obviously we haven't talked about application monitoring, but again, very important within a healthcare organization. It's very critical to this patient. And in fact, like I said, there's a lot of heat on the institution if they can't get within 5 to 10 minutes, find out the core cause of reason the person showed up, find out what medications they might need, and take them into getting into a better place. So what we typically talk about is let's take all the intel that Netreo is providing on all of, whether it be on your synthetic transactions, whether it be on the infrastructure or the devices that sit on that infrastructure. Let's look at the health of that collectively. Let's take a holistic approach and determine that at any point in any time in the day, are we seeing trends? Maybe at noon when 5 nurses, when they change shifts, there's a problem when they're trying to use the technology when the new shift comes on. All of that we can see in this platform, be able to provide that intel back to the customer in a very digestible manner, and they're able to make better business decisions because of that. I used healthcare as an example. We do the same, let's say in a quick serve restaurant. Again, most people like to go through the drive-through and there's big digital signage when they walk up. They have IP cameras that are looking at all of the cars that are in line. If you notice, those are actually tickers and looking to see how far back that line goes, so they know whether they have to send a body out to help with the backup. A lot of quick serve restaurants started doing that. I don't know if you're familiar, but I'll use Chick-fil-A as an example. They actually have people in the drive-through that only when there's a backup do those physical people come out and take your order, and you're able to swipe your card on a mobile device, etc. Well, the only way that they get that information is by looking and making sure that they can see through their camera. They're looking, actually, there's 2 cameras. There's one actually at the top of the building, and there's one on the kiosk that they are providing you with their digital signage menu, all of which are important because every time a car goes away, that's lost revenue for that particular institution. That happens quite a bit. And there's only about 17% of folks that will get out of their car, park, and go into the establishment if they've been waiting in the drive-thru. It's not a high percentage. So things like that, if I can see that activity, but what happens if, let's say, that camera's offline? I have no idea how many people are backed up, and that's lost revenue every time a car leaves, the drive-thru. So those types of things that, candidly, before I started being support for a quick serve restaurant, I didn't even think about. But Netreo has helped us with that as well. We're able to provide you, here's actually the capacity, because a lot of it is they're actually recording. So we're able to see capacity of those recordings. Is it connected? I don't know. Let's take a look. How about at 1 p.m. when it gets backed up? Let's say that camera goes out. Well, at 1 p.m. when you make between 1 and 3 is when they actually make the bulk of their revenue. If in fact we aren't able to see what's going on, that restaurant is losing business minute over minute. And again, something I never really thought about until I got into this business, but every point of visibility, if you can gather and get ahead of those potential problems, you are far better off than someone who has to stare at a screen and make sure they're watching all the alerts and then have to acknowledge those alerts. By that time, the customer's already left. Mm-hmm. So reactive approach is definitely not something that we are a huge proponent of. A lot of NPM platforms are only reactive, or they require a lot of, like I said, administration. So in this case, all the intel that we're getting from the platform, we're able to then turn around and educate our customers, give them the information that they need, and help them make those better business decisions about perhaps we need to look at another application that you're running. It doesn't seem to be working at optimum level. Maybe we need to structure your digital signage a bit differently because you seem to have some capacity issues there. It all kind of flows together, but I think for the most part, giving a customer digestible intel before problems arise, there's an unlimited value on that. And so when we go in and we're in a sales cycle, it's something we always talk about, because I'd like to give you the information before you come to me and say, help me fix this problem.
Right.
How do I do that? Well, obviously I do that with the platform and this partnership.
Amazing. So we're talking about when everything's working well and humming, in terms of getting device information all in one dashboard, so you can kind of understand exactly what's happening there, and even provide not just the historical information, but also predictive analytics in terms of how things could go wrong. Wow, a lot of moving parts out there. So how often do you see or run into a poorly implemented network performance monitoring or management platform within the retail community?
It's our huge selling feature for us, actually. It happens quite frequently. A customer will spend thousands of dollars on the implementation of a tool, but they don't implement it right. There are no thresholds set. They do have to require heavy administration. They are just looking at this broke and they're trying to do some sort of, let me try to back into what happened here. They're not monitoring at the right thresholds for the type of devices. Let's say they haven't really developed a device profile that's correct for the impact that may occur at that environment. And so what happens is they're chasing ghosts a lot of the times. They can't get the data they need. Therefore, they're going after every little issue that arises, when in reality, it might be a chain effect. That whole problem incident management sort of breakdown, that, the idle disciplines that are out there. You really want to find the problem, because all these incidents are rolling up. If you were able to fix that, you wouldn't necessarily have, they don't implement it correctly. So all they're seeing are these individual incidents, and they don't necessarily there's no correlation of that data so that they can make a better, wait a minute, let's pause, let's look at all the information, and then let's focus on something that's actionable. That doesn't happen. Obviously, we've had in retail, like I said, they're very typically cost effective. And so they also pick a platform that might be great. It measures up, down, but that doesn't give them any intel on what they actually need for their environment. I could mention a couple platforms. I won't do that here, that we've seen some significant challenges with, and some, again, heavy administration. It really requires a team of people to manage, and those people are having to do what I consider to be the heavy lifting. You really want a platform that does a lot of that heavy lifting for you, provide you what you need, and then you can use your actual personnel to focus on fixing and coming to a resolution versus trying to determine where the root cause may be coming from.
That makes sense. My goodness, that's definitely, an example of how technology can really help customers find a root cause analysis, so they can actually, do this mean time to repair a lot faster. And I think we're also starting to talk about mean time to detect as well, because
Yes.
we're also trying to get ahead of the curve before the incident happens.
Well, and I think, I always tell my customers, we're going to make you look really good, because you're going to be able to go to your executive team and say, here's everything I actually prevented from happening. I can equate that to dollars lost. Here's what didn't happen. Pat on the back for me. And that's how I look at it, because I feel that my job and the job of Decision Point in our partnership with Netreo is to make our customers' IT department look great. Yes, I love the dashboards. I love being able to get the intel, but if I can package that in a way that the IT director can walk on into the CIO and say, here's what we saved you this month. Look at all the information. And by the way, we were able to resolve these before they even hit our stores. I think it's a win-win.
That's amazing. So speaking of different digital transformations that are taking place, how has self-service as an option, or sort of the functionality, right, within quick service restaurants really impacted the need for high availability?
So as we come out of the pandemic, and you'd think that we would be completely out of it by now, but there's still these little areas of in the quick serve restaurant world that are still impacted. And a lot of that has to do with the staff that they have that's available to serve customers. So again, they've spent a lot of money in rebranding themselves, putting in these kiosks. Their drive-throughs, I mean, if you've been to anyone that's been remodeled, it is really, the digital signage is, I mean, I'm surprised it can't order for you. So they've spent all this money and doing that. However, they haven't spent a lot of money on managing the platform to make sure those are all operational. I'll give you an example. We have a quick serve restaurant who actually makes product on site. So that product, once they make it, let's say for the first 4 hours that the store is open, once that product is depleted, they have a way to know, okay, we've depleted, we now need to go in the back and make more product. Well, the way that they do that is they have notifications outside because they see the amount of people coming in. It notifies them, hey, we have fresh products, come on in. If that, in fact, notification goes dark, by default, they go in the back and go, hey, I need to make more product. Well, if that, which by the way is hard coded in a machine in the back, if that is malfunctioning, they could run out of product. The product could no longer be fresh. They could, in some cases, if they're not making the product on site, they have to have it from a distribution center within a 2-hour time frame. So it relies heavily on the uptime of that notification that is literally just something that is put on the outside of the restaurant to let their customers know we have fresh product. And I think, again, not something I thought much about. I just thought it was, oh, it's a cute attribute of this particular chain. But in reality, it kicks off so many other things. They could have stale product. Again, they could run out. They could be turning customers away because this was malfunctioning. They could throw product away at the end of the day because they over manufactured for the day. And so that's all money lost, whether it's new sales, whether it's unfortunately food that has to be donated or distributed at the end of the day because they made more than they should have, all of which is something that if we just were monitoring this connection, we'd be in good shape. We could tell you if it was working or not. We would get to that probably before you'd even notice. And that actually has been they came to us, that was a huge pain point for them, as well as knowing whether or not the digital signage in their drive-through is working. If you have 4 of those 10 screens out, if no one tells you that's happening, you're wondering why you're having all these cars turn away. Well, it's because no one's telling you, hey guys, unless someone physically goes out and looks. So I always like to say we're kind of the positive big brother. We have this application in the back. We're able to give you the intel in your environment. We're able to show you what we were preventing from happening. And it's all money to them, whether it's revenue lost or dollars spent that they couldn't recoup. If we can save them that's a great ROI conversation.
That's fantastic. So there's a real tie-in and outcome from monitoring as well, all this technology to actually dollars and cents, like revenue.
Dollars and cents. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we go through an ROI model with our customers ahead of time. Let's go through your 5 pain points and let us show you what we could do and equate that to dollars and cents. Because at the end of the day, we obviously know the person that's going to say, yes, here's $1 million, go ahead and, totally upgrade my infrastructure. They need to see what they're going to get from that. And I think we've come up with a real good sales positioning pitch, partnering with Netreo on how we talk about that ROI, how we ensure that I can equate every minute of degraded or downtime in processing revenue equates to how many dollars for you. So in a given day, you lost $10,281. Do you want to have a repeat of that? Or would you like us to implement a tool to ensure that that doesn't happen? They're usually going to go with the latter.
Interesting. So, like thinking of the technology transformation and all the different things that we can predict. And one of the things you talked about was, oh, they have so much information, they could have placed the order for you. So that brings to mind this AI ML element that I think lots of retailers, quick service restaurants are leaning towards. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of these industry members are thinking about now and what some of that potential impact might be?
So I think for a lot of it, obviously they're creating customer profiles when you walk in the door. And actually you don't even have to walk in the door. They'll take your profile if you're ordering online on a regular basis. They build that profile out, and then as every time you move, whether it's in a physical store or on the website, they're feeding you information that they know that you're commonly going to purchase. It's helping drive the right product to the right consumer. Therefore, their increase in sales occurs. They know if I don't normally look at paint, if I walk into Home Depot, they're not going to try to push deals on paint to me. However, if I happen to look at light fixtures walking into Home Depot, anytime they have a sale, anytime they have a discount, they come up with a new brand that they might have in their stores, they're going to push that information to me because they know that's something that I commonly purchase. All of that comes through all of this technology. A lot of it sits on your phone. Obviously, if they can track where your movements are in the store, what they put on their end caps, let's say at a Target, knowing that most of their consumers buy X amount of products within the first 5 minutes of entering the store. They're going to feed all that information back to those that actually build the aisles, that product placement. They make sure that that first visual that consumer may see is what they commonly buy. All of that has to be, it's tons of data. How do they make best business decisions? Well, they take all that data and they plot it out and they determine what's going to generate the most revenue for them. Where do you think that data sits? It's in a data farm somewhere that probably sits on a server, either in the cloud or in a data center. And someone has to be maintaining and monitoring that activity. So that's, again, where we come in and talk about how can you're pulling all this information in. If you lose it, that could be a real detriment to revenue generation in your stores. How can we make sure that that's available to you and that your availability of that information is, again, as optimal as it can be? Digital transformation comes in a lot of different ways, but in retailers, it's really pulling in the consumer profile and then applying that to where they think that consumer is actually going to be spending the majority of their dollars. And that's not an easy thing, especially when, but you have creatures of habit, right? You know that you buy the same 5 things, that consumer will continue to buy the same 5 things. You want to make sure that you're funneling not all the things they've never purchased before, but all the things that they spend in your establishment on a monthly basis. Really, we need more information. The more information we can get, the more we can correlate it, the more we can look at root cause. And that usually doesn't come from the person reporting the problem, unfortunately. They'll just say, hey, register 5 is down. Okay, well, there's a lot of things that are connected to register 5 in addition to the network that register 5 sits on. So you really have to dive into it. And unfortunately, the trial and error of troubleshooting, if I can have that information already available to me, it takes a lot longer to resolve that issue. If I didn't have that I could look at and look at some of the historical information. So I really think, we're starting to see a shift on really applications and the non-tangibles. They're really looking to get intel on, not so much the hardware itself.
That's great insight. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today, Susan, with us.
I really appreciate you letting me be a part of it. I think I get very passionate about these topics because I think the more that we can provide information to our consumers, to our customers, to their end clients, the better and not only more sticky we are, but this partnership continues to grow. And so that's most important to me.
Thank you, Susan, and bye for now.
Thank you, Jazz. All right. Have a good day.